Now I'm going to talk about something which is weakening the Mormon church. And that would be bogus testimonies. I personally have witnessed firsthand where men would walk up to the podium on Fast and Testimony Sunday. They have a little 3-year-old little boy standing in front of me. He'd lean out and say, I know. He'd give a little whisper. The little boy said, I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know that the Book of Mormon is true. I know that this is the true church. I stood there and I was infuriated. Here is a man who has just walked up in front of a congregation and had his little 3-year-old who couldn't read, so it'd be a little hard for him to have a testimony that he knew because God had told him anything. How could he have read this book and asked God if it was true? It was a bogus testimony, and the father was teaching that little boy to lie. And the Mormons as a whole are fine with that. Oh, this is teaching them to get up and talk in front of masses of people. So what you're doing is you're teaching your kids to have a phony testimony. So if that little 3-year-old is going to say, I know this is true, I know this is true, I know this is true, and you know that he's lying, even though he doesn't really think he's lying, it's because he's been trained all of his life. Say these things. Say this, say this, say this. And they get a little bit older, they're doing the same thing. I remember a few years ago, my son was at a fireside at the bishop's house. And the kids were up there talking about these young men and young women. Can you imagine? We have a prophet, and God actually talks to our prophet. Well, by the way they were talking, obviously God's never talked to you. And how many times have you gotten up there and given this little bogus little mantra? I know that the Book of Mormon's true. I know this is the true church. I know we have a prophet at the head of our church. You don't know anything, or it wouldn't be such a big deal that God spoke to the prophets. You know, what's interesting, go back in the Old Testament. You got Eldad and Medad that are prophesying in the among the people. And I forget who it was that goes to Moses. Moses says, what's the big deal? God would that all men were prophets, and that the spirit of prophecy would fall upon all men. And if you're teaching people to give false testimony and to lie about what God has told them, you're not doing any good for your organization, you're not doing any good for your kids. You're teaching your kids to lie.